This chapter of Poison functions as a critical turning point in the narrative, not because of overt action, but because of the emotional and structural consequences that radiate outward from Angel Dust's collapse. From the opening moment, where a Sloth Ring medic confirms that Angel's comatose state is the result of severe drug exposure, the focus of the chapter is not simply his condition, but what his condition reveals about the fragile ecosystem of the Hazbin Hotel itself. The responses of Cherri, Husk, and Charlie immediately established the depth of Angel's integration into the hotel's found family. Cherri's physical closeness and instinctive caretaking reflect a long history of shared survival, reinforcing that her bond with Angel predates the hotel and is rooted in lived trauma rather than idealistic redemption. Husk's quieter concern operates differently, but is no less significant. His actions, stabilizing Angel and later carrying him to his room, demonstrate a protective instinct that contrasts with his usual cynicism, suggesting that Angel represents one of the few connections Husk has allowed himself to value. Charlie's reaction, however, carries the greatest narrative weight. Her fear is not limited to losing a friend. It extends to the collapse of her entire project. Having already witnessed the loss of Penchus, she recognizes that losing Angel would not simply be another tragedy, but a direct threat to the foundational belief that redemption is possible. This fear is amplified by Angel's unique position within the hotel. Following Penchus's death, Angel is no longer simply a participant in the project. He is its sole active proof of concept. His presence sustains the idea that the hotel can function as a space of transformation rather than a symbolic gesture. In this sense, Angel operates as what Blake Roman described as a linchpin character. The term is particularly appropriate. A linchpin holds a structure together not through dominance, but through necessity. Removing it does not merely weaken the structure, it causes collapse. The chapter makes clear that Angel's role extends beyond his personal arc. He anchors both the emotional stability of the cast and the ideological validity of the hotel itself. In contrast, Lucifer and Alastor occupy a more detached narrative position. Lucifer's presence in the hotel is explicitly tied to Charlie rather than to the redemption project or its participants. While he acknowledges that some sinners may possess redeeming qualities, he does not engage with them on a personal level. His reaction to Angel's condition is therefore filtered through his role as a father rather than as a stakeholder in the hotel's success. Alastor's distance, while less openly stated, functions in a similar way. His detachment is strategic rather than emotional, positioning him as an observer of the system rather than a participant within its emotional framework. Together, these two characters highlight the divide between those who are emotionally invested in Angel's survival and those who remain structurally or intellectually removed. The introduction of the Sloth Ring medic expands the scope of the conflict beyond the hotel, situating Angel's condition within a broader pattern affecting hellborn demons across multiple rings. The detail that the Lust Ring remains unaffected is particularly significant. Within established Helliverse logic, as seen in Hell of a Boss during the episode Oops, Asmodeus explicitly rejects the use of substances such as love potions, framing lust as an experience that requires mutual consent. This ideological boundary distinguishes lust from the other rings and reinforces the idea that what is being distributed is not an extension of lust, but a corruption of it. By incorporating this distinction, the chapter strengthens its internal logic while also sharpening its thematic critique. The substance affecting Angel is not merely a drug. It is a tool of control, one that aligns more closely with the exploitative practices of the V's than with any legitimate expression of desire. Angel's statement that Valentino gave him something provides a narrative anchor for this suspicion. However, the inability of the hotel residents to prove the V's involvement introduces a critical tension. Knowledge without evidence becomes functionally useless. The characters are forced into a position of reactive care rather than proactive justice. This tension mirrors the broader power dynamics at play within Hell. The V's operate within systems of influence, reputation, and manipulation that allow them to obscure direct accountability. Even when their actions are understood, they remain insulated by the lack of tangible proof. As a result, Angel's suffering becomes both personal and systemic. It is not simply the result of individual cruelty, but of a structure that enables that cruelty to persist without consequence. The narrative then expands beyond Hell, shifting to heaven and introducing Molly, Angel's twin sister. Her sudden, visceral awareness of Angel's suffering suggests a soul bond that transcends realms, reinforcing the idea that Angel's story carries metaphysical weight beyond his immediate environment. This detail becomes particularly significant when contrasted with canon, where Angel has not openly discussed Molly or emphasized having a twin. Within the broader Hellaverse, twins appear as a recurring motif, often representing fractured identity or relational rupture. For example, Blitzo and his sister are separated by guilt and blame tied to a shared past. In Angel and Molly's case, however, the separation is not caused by personal conflict, but by cosmic division between heaven and hell. This distinction reframes Molly as both a symbolic and emotional anchor. She represents a version of Angel's past untouched by hell's corruption, as well as a possible motivation for redemption. Yet Angel's silence regarding her existence is equally important. His refusal to speak of Molly suggests both protection and resignation. To acknowledge her fully would require confronting the trauma of his family and the uncertainty of whether reunion is even possible. In this way, Molly embodies a paradox. She is both a source of hope and a reminder of its fragility. If redemption fails, then the possibility of seeing her again is not merely lost, but revealed to have been an illusion all along. Back in hell, Angel's relocation to his room provides a quieter but equally important layer of characterization. The details of his personal space reveal a more vulnerable and private side of him, one that contrasts sharply with his public persona as a performer. With the destruction of the original hotel, much of Angel's previous belongings would have been lost, allowing the reconstructed space to reflect a subtle shift in identity. The room becomes less dominated by the exaggerated imagery of his profession and instead incorporates more personal, intimate elements, including references to Molly. This environmental storytelling reinforces the idea that Angel is not static. Beneath the persona he projects lies a self that is gradually emerging, even if he is not yet ready to fully acknowledge it. This internal struggle is further externalized through Angel's descent into a labyrinth-like mental state. His consciousness becomes a fragmented landscape of distorted memories, symbolizing trauma, suppression, and identity fracture. The use of doors as memory constructs introduces a visual and thematic language. Lighter doors represent positive memories, darker ones reflect trauma, while damaged or destroyed doors suggest the erosion of memory through prolonged drug use and psychological strain. The presence of electronically locked doors adds another layer, implying deliberate interference. These locked memories point toward external manipulation, most notably from Vox, whose influence has already been established through hypnotic control and enforced memory gaps. The implication that Angel may no longer fully trust his own agency deepens the psychological stakes. If his memories can be altered or suppressed, then even his decision to join the hotel becomes uncertain. The subtle presence of an unseen observer within this mental space introduces an additional layer of unease. While Vox is the most immediate suspect, the ambiguity allows for the possibility of a far more dangerous force at work, potentially aligning with the growing speculation surrounding Rue and the larger cosmological forces within the Hellaverse. This shifts the threat from purely interpersonal conflict to something more existential in scope. Finally, the chapter closes with the V's consolidating their response, revealing the calculated nature of their power. Unable to control the broader fallout affecting Hellborn demons, they instead focus on narrative manipulation. By leveraging Angel's history as a drug user, they construct a plausible public narrative that frames his condition as self-inflicted. This strategy underscores their understanding of perception as power. Truth becomes irrelevant if it cannot be proven, and reputation becomes a weapon. Within this dynamic, Vox's personal animosity toward Angel becomes particularly revealing. While Vox outwardly dismisses Angel as expendable, his underlying resentment stems from something deeper: Angel's ability to draw attention effortlessly. Vox, who has built his identity around control of media and influence, perceives Angel's natural charisma as both an asset and a threat. This tension explains why Vox both uses and sidelines him, recognizing that prolonged exposure could shift attention away from himself. In this context, Angel's unconscious state becomes strategically advantageous for the V's. Without him, the hotel loses its most visible symbol of redemption, weakening its credibility. At the same time, the V's gain the ability to shape the narrative uncontested, knowing Charlie lacks the evidence needed to challenge them publicly. Ultimately, this chapter reinforces Angel Dust's role as both an emotional core and a narrative fulcrum. His collapse destabilizes the hotel not only because he is loved, but because he embodies the possibility the hotel is built upon. If he survives, that possibility endures, however tenuously. If he does not, the consequences extend far beyond grief. They threaten to unravel the entire premise of redemption. In this way, Angel's condition is not just a plot development. It is a test of the world itself, forcing every character to confront what remains when hope is placed under extreme strain.